Welcome back, everyone. It is good to see you all. I want to talk about choosing the right gear. However, this video is not, I don't think this video is the video you think it is. I am not going to tell you what gear to choose. I'm going to tell you how to choose gear. An important concept you need to be aware of. There is no perfect gear. There is only perfect gear for you. Let's go. Okay, here's what we're going to talk about today. I want to talk about choosing gear, which is super important. And I want to empower you to make those choices and sort of how to do the research to figure out what you want. I see way too often people online asking, what piece of gear should I buy? In what category should I buy this piece of gear? And it is a huge mistake. I see it on Facebook. I'm rarely on Facebook, but I see it on Facebook. I see it frequently on Reddit. I've been a Redditor for like 17 years. I'm diving into it a little bit more now, so it like peaks and valleys, but I am very fluent in the Reddit community. I'm pretty active on Sea Kayaker, on Kayaker, on hiking, on camping, on GoPro. I was an admin on GoPro for a while, but I do not want you going to any of those places and saying, I want to do X, what piece of gear should I use? And so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about sort of overview of how to fit boots. We're going to talk a little bit about finding the right bike. We're going to talk about fitting backpacks, and we're going to talk about fitting kayaks. A lot to cover. Let's get started. Okay, so here's my real issue with Facebook, with Reddit, in terms of gear recommendations. If you say, what boot should I get? People are not going to tell you what boot you should get. They're going to tell you what boot they got and how much they love it. I believe that that's because we are all inherently nervous about the gear purchases that we're making. And so we need to reinforce that by telling other people, hey, this has been really great for me. You should try it too. The problem is what works for you may not work for me. And in terms of footwear, it's because feet are all shaped differently. In terms of packs, it's because torsos are all shaped differently. Similarly, with kayaks, we all need different fits in the boat itself in order to get performance out of the boat. What works for you may not work for me, and that is super important. So to go back to boots, what you might ask instead is, I need a hiking boot for this trip that I'm doing. Can someone recommend boots that fit wide feet, or fit narrow feet, or fit high volume feet? I actually have what are called high volume feet, in that they're just thick from top to bottom. As much as I love Salomon footwear, they don't make anything that fits me. So if I say, hey, what shoes should I buy? And you say Salomon, short of knowing that I have a high volume foot and I don't fit real well in Salomons, that's going to be of zero help to me. But this is where you say, but Brett, it's so overwhelming. There is so much gear. How am I going to know where to start? So what I think you should do, and what I do, is I reach out to people that I trust, mostly people that I know, and I say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think I should do? Which is how we ended up here. This is my wife's new gravel bike. I bought a new mountain bike. But in talking to my son, who sells bikes for a living and is an avid biker, we came to the sort of understanding that a mountain bike is not going to work for her, nor is a road bike. And so a gravel bike was the sort of best compromise between those two worlds. And it's similar with kayaks. You can ask questions all day long and without getting real information as to what kind of boat you need. You need to talk to someone who you trust, who understands what you specifically are doing, and then figure out what sort of boat you want. Not everyone wants to start with a 17-foot touring kayak, much to my chagrin. I personally think everyone should, but in fact, I know that that's not right for everyone. You might want to start with a 14-foot touring kayak and see how that feels. Maybe you don't want to tour at all. Maybe you need to be in a sit on top. Maybe you need to be in a recreational kayak to get a feel for it. And actually, I think recreational kayaks are a great way to start. They're generally less expensive. You can start paddling it right away, and then you can learn sort of where you want to be in a couple years. A phrase I use with people frequently, whether they're instructors or adventurers or whatever, is I say, where do you see yourself in 2 years? What do you want to be doing in 2 years? Let's work towards that goal. And so if you say, I want to start out paddling now, I've got this rec boat, but in 2 years, I want to be doing weekend overnight trips, great. In a year and a half, be thinking about a boat like this. That's the way you should be thinking. So that can get us in the ballpark. That can get us thinking about what sort of category we need to be in. But then once you get into that category, it can still be overwhelming in terms of how many options there are. If you walked into an outdoor store and you've looked at a wall of boots or shoes, like the question is, where do you begin? And you need to get recommendations from someone you trust. And that can be a knowledgeable person at a store. It can be a person you know with knowledge, but make sure they really have knowledge, not just experience. Those are two very different things. So for me, when I'm looking for a boot, I think about like, how much support do I want in that boot? What do I want that boot to do? This is a boot I've been wearing for a very long time, and I really got it when I was carrying a big, heavy pack. I also wore it when I was teaching REI classes because I wanted to role model using a heavier duty boot as opposed to like a trail runner. The first thing I do when I pick up a piece of hiking footwear is put the heel in one hand and the toe in the other and push and see how hard it is for the toe to get pushed backwards, where it bends, right? That you could see how hard I was pushing on that, and it bent right here, which is where your foot is designed to articulate. If it'll bend anywhere, it's not offering a ton of support. In particular, there's a piece of footwear that I see all the time that people wear as a hiking shoe that is not a hiking shoe. I'm going to do a video about it, but I need to find one that I can cut up to explain why it's not a hiking shoe. But if you do this test and press it together, you're going to realize that it's not really offering any support. If you are in an outdoor store and you're looking at footwear and you've got it narrowed down to a couple of choices, you need to A, have your foot measured both sitting and standing so you can see the range of your foot. Then try on the boot. You should have about a thumb's width between your toes and the front of the boot. We don't want your toe impacting the front of the boot when you're walking down. The place that you're trying on your boots should have some form of ramp that you can walk down. And what I tell people to do is walk up the ramp and then do baby steps down the ramp. When you're going up the ramp, your heel should not be moving in the back of the boot. When you're going down the ramp, your toes should not be hitting the front of the boot. The heel movement might be the boot is too big, or it might be that the boots aren't tied tight enough. The toe hitting the front of the boot might be that the boot is too small, or it might mean that the boot isn't tied tight enough. So fix the lacing and then try it again. If you have pain in the top of your foot, it's because, like me, your foot is too high volume for that footwear. There are all sorts of things that you should be thinking about trying on a boot in terms of fit. Is there movement? If there is movement, let's fix the movement. Oh, and it goes without saying, please wear the socks that you're going to be wearing hiking in the hiking footwear when you try it on. That's a quick overview of how to fit a boot. But you've got to try on boots. Just because you're trying on something does not mean you have to buy something, but you have to try on boots. You have to think about how it feels. If you can't make a decision, if you're like, I'm not quite sure, take a picture of the boot that was best, but still not perfect, and come back another day. Take your time. Okay, let's talk real quick about pack fitting. Okay, pack fitting is something that I did for a very long time when I worked at REI, and I was fortunate enough to be allowed to train folks to pack fit as well. It was something I took a lot of pride in and something I really enjoyed. This is an exceptionally popular Osprey Aura 50. This is actually my wife's pack. I don't own a full-size pack at the moment. I'm not in immediate need of one, so I'm doing okay. I've got a 40 liter, which I use for a lot of different things, but I'm gonna use this still to talk about pack fit, even though it's not my pack. Every pack feels good when you put it on and it's empty. If you're gonna try on a pack, it needs to have weight in it. And in general, what I would do is put pillows down here and then heavy weight back behind your shoulder blades, at least 10 pounds, I would say between 10 and 15. And then you're gonna say, but I'm gonna have more weight than that when I'm backpacking. Dead weight does not feel like packed weight, but 15 pounds of dead weight is enough to tell you if the pack feels good or not. I've done videos about pack fitting. I'll put a link to that up here. It is a process that involves having your torso measured, having the pack seated correctly on you. The waist belt should be centered on your iliac crest. There should not be a big gap between your shoulders. You should be able to slide a hand under there with a little bit of resistance. It can be complex, and similar to boots, you've got to try on a bunch of different things in order to make sure that it feels right. There should be no rubbing, no pinching, no binding. It should feel good. Check out that video if you want to see details on pack fitting. I don't want to redo a video that I've already done. The trick is they've got to measure your torso. You've got to try it on with weight. You've got to get it adjusted by someone who knows how to adjust it. Then you've got to wear it for 15, 20, 30 minutes, see how it feels. And don't be afraid to do that for 2 or 3 packs. If you do a third pack and you're like, I'm still not sure, similar to the boots, take a picture of the pack or a picture of the tag, come back another day. Just because you spent time trying on a pack does not mean you have to buy it. Kayaks are similar. Once you figure out what type of kayak you need, you've got to paddle kayaks. This is really hard because most retailers don't have a setup for you to test paddle a boat. And it is something that drives me crazy that we haven't figured out a way to do that. But you've got to test paddle boats. Look for people that have a similar boat, maybe not the exact boat, but a similar boat is better than nothing. Find clubs, see if they have boats you can test paddle, things like that. There is no easy answer. If you can't do any of that, you have to at least sit in the boat in the store. You've got to see how it feels sitting in that boat, where you're making contact with the boat. I've talked, again, similar to backpacking, I've talked about boat fit a bunch of times. I'll put a link to a video up here. Please go check that out. It is about fit. Always about fit. Which brings me to this. My wife and I went to REI, honestly, because I still get my discount. It's a great place to shop for us. We went to REI. I had talked to both my son and my daughter-in-law. My daughter-in-law actually used to work for me at REI Outdoor School. She taught mountain biking. He's an avid rider. So after we narrowed it down to a handful of bikes, even though my wife doesn't have a lot of experience on gravel bikes, we were able to fit this correctly for her in the store and then let her test ride a handful of bikes. And even without a ton of experience, by riding multiple bikes, she gets a feel for what she likes and what she doesn't like and what works for her and what doesn't work for her. And that's how we ended up with the bike behind me. Now, the nice thing about bikes is that if the fit isn't quite right, you can do a million things to sort of tweak the fit. You can change the length of this piece here. You can change the height of the seat or the angle of the seat. You can change out handlebars. You can do lots of things to make this bike fit someone. So I feel like with bikes, and I'm not a huge bike person, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like with bikes, there's more leeway in terms of after the fact making it fit you better. Whereas with kayaks, if it's close, you can make it fit you better. Like I pad out the interiors of all my kayaks to fit me better, but like changing seats is not easy. Changing foot pegs is not easy. All of those things you kind of got to get right with a kayak, where with a bike you can make tons of changes. So I highly, highly recommend taking time with products to learn the way they should fit, and then trying them on and making sure that they fit before you make a purchase. Don't ever walk into an outdoor store, pick a pack up off the wall, put it on with nothing in it, and say, oh, this feels great, I'll take it, and walk out of the store. Every pack feels good empty. Every pair of boots feels good for the first 30 seconds. You know, it's after 10 minutes, how does it feel? Most kayaks, you can tell pretty quickly if it's right or wrong. Most bikes, I think you know pretty quickly if it's right or wrong. But with those, you have a little bit of leeway to play with fit. And then there's all sorts of knowledge. There's tons of resources online in terms of finding out reviews of gear, finding out what works well for what. I frequently see, you know, on like Gear Junkie, this shoe and the pros and cons. This shoe does not work well for people with wider feet. So things like that are things that you can talk to people about and find information online about. To go back to where I started, if you post online, what boots should I get? You're at best wasting your time, at worst stepping into an absolutely wrong decision. Do not go to Reddit, do not go to Facebook looking for that sort of advice. Okay, this has been super fun. This is obviously something that I'm super passionate about. If you have questions about fitting a backpack, if you have questions about fitting footwear, if you have some questions about fitting bikes, I am not a bike expert, but working on becoming one. If you have questions about fitting a kayak, you can reach out to me via email. You can leave a comment down below. You can find me on Instagram and direct message me. I answer questions about boats in particular on a weekly basis, you know, one or two. And as we're working this year to sort of spread out the breadth of this channel, I want to be talking about backpacks. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on bikes and bike maintenance, but we're not giving up on kayaking. There will be plenty of kayaking coming. If you enjoyed this, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. Down below are links to Coffee. On Coffee, there are stickers, and I've got new stickers coming. There are risk management stuff, so the risk management chart, the SOAP note, the Guides Way, which is PDF download with well over 100 tips and tricks of things that I and my friends who work in the outdoors all learned that made our lives better. Super simple download, super useful stuff. Those I'm always working on to make bigger. There'll be a new version of that, I think, in a couple months. My books are on Coffee, or you could just buy me a coffee, and that would be super appreciated. The theme for this year is for you to get outside and have adventures, whether it's on a bike. I just like doing this because this bike is so light. Whether it's on a bike, a boat, a backpack, whatever, get outside. Okay, I'll see you out there.
Bethany, come a little bit more left if you can. Good, cut a little bit more right, hang across my bow.